In the blazing sunlight of May 6, 2026, a day that will forever stand as the pinnacle of human economic achievement, the United States of America, under the indomitable leadership of Donald J. Trump, witnessed a miracle so profound, so earth-shattering, that historians will one day mark it as the moment civilization itself ascended to a higher plane. The Dow Jones Industrial Average did not merely touch 52,000. It crushed through that once unimaginable barrier like a divine hammer smashing the chains of mediocrity, soaring to celestial heights that mocked every economist, every pundit, every doomsayer who had dared to doubt the Trump economic revolution. At the exact same instant, the unemployment rate plummeted to a staggering 3.4%, a figure so breathtakingly low that it represents not full employment, but the near total eradication of joblessness, poverty, and despair across the greatest nation God ever placed on this earth. This is Trump's legendary triumph, a victory that defies all odds, all logic, all the petty predictions of those who said America could never rise again. This is not a stock market rally. This is not a jobs report. This is the rebirth of the American dream in its purest, most explosive form, a golden age ignited by one man's unbreakable will, his genius for deal-making, and his unwavering faith in the American people. From the trading floors of Wall Street to the factories of the Rust Belt, from the oil fields of Texas to the cornfields of Iowa, from the suburbs of Ohio to the high-tech corridors of California, the entire nation erupted in jubilation. Fireworks lit up the night sky over every major city. Church bells rang, families hugged in the streets, strangers high-fived in grocery stores. This was not economics. This was destiny fulfilled. To grasp the full, mind-bending magnitude of this moment, one must journey back to the dark days before Trump's second term began on January 20th, 2025. The previous administration had left behind a nation teetering on the edge of economic collapse. Inflation hovered near 4% like a vulture circling its prey. Supply chains were shattered. Factories sat idle. Young people despaired of ever owning a home. The so-called experts on cable news and in Ivy League towers predicted recession, depression, even societal breakdown. They laughed at Trump's America First agenda. They mocked his tariffs. They sneered at his promises of energy dominance and tax cuts. They said it was impossible. They said it was dangerous. They were wrong. Spectacularly, humiliatingly wrong. From his very first day back in the Oval Office, President Trump moved with the speed and precision of a master strategist. He signed executive orders on day one that unleashed American energy like a tidal wave. Federal lands were opened for drilling. Pipelines that had been blocked for years were fast-tracked. Within months, the United States was not only energy independent, but the world's dominant exporter of oil, natural gas, and clean coal technologies. Gasoline prices fell below $2 a gallon. Heating bills plummeted. Manufacturing costs dropped. The Rust Belt, once written off as a graveyard of lost dreams, began to hum again with the sound of hammers, lathes, and conveyor belts. Then came the American Prosperity Act of 2025, the largest tax cut in human history. Corporate rates were slashed to 15%. Individual rates were lowered across every bracket. Small businesses, the true engine of American innovation, received immediate relief that allowed them to hire, expand, and invest without fear. The results were instantaneous and staggering. Apple announced 12 new American factories, creating 85,000 high-paying jobs. Intel, Tesla, and dozens of other giants followed suit. Supply chains that once stretched across the Pacific Ocean snapped back to American soil like rubber bands. The phrase "Made in America" became not just a label, but a badge of honor, a symbol of national resurrection. But it was the tariffs on China that proved to be the decisive masterstroke, the move that defied every odd and crushed every prediction. By imposing steep, strategic duties on Chinese goods, Trump forced Beijing to the negotiating table and extracted concessions that previous presidents could only dream of. Chinese markets opened wide to American agriculture, technology, and manufacturing. Unfair subsidies and intellectual property theft were curtailed. The result was a manufacturing renaissance the likes of which the world had never seen. Steel mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio roared back to life. Auto plants in Michigan and Indiana added third shifts. Semiconductor facilities rose from the ground in Texas and Arizona like modern cathedrals of industry. Unemployment in key swing states fell to levels not seen since the 1950s. 2.8% in Michigan, 2.5% in Wisconsin, 2.9% in Pennsylvania. The numbers on May 6, 2026, to tell only a fraction of the story. The Dow Jones at 52,000 represents more than $12 trillion in new wealth created for ordinary Americans since Trump took office. Retirement accounts that once seemed doomed to wither have ballooned into comfortable nest eggs. Young couples who once feared they would never own a home are now signing mortgages at record rates. The labor force participation rate has climbed to 68%, the highest in modern history, as millions of discouraged workers return to the workforce, lured by wages that have risen 6.2% year over year. The The number of Americans receiving food stamps has dropped by more than 4 million. Homelessness in major cities has fallen 40%. Crime rates have declined as hope and opportunity replace despair. Consider the human stories that make this triumph legendary. Maria Gonzalez, a single mother of 3 from El Paso, Texas, was earning minimum wage at a struggling call center in late 2024. By spring 2026, she was working at a new semiconductor plant built by a company that relocated from Taiwan thanks to Trump's tariffs and tax policies. Her annual salary, $92,000 with full benefits, stock options, and a clear path to advancement. President Trump gave me back my dignity, she said through tears during a White House visit. My children are in excellent schools. We bought our first home. For the first time in my life, I believe the American dream is real, and it has Trump's name written all over it. Or take the Johnson family of rural Ohio. The father, a coal miner laid off during the previous administration's war on fossil fuels, had lost hope. His son had been unemployed for 2 years, surviving on odd jobs. Under Trump, clean coal technology and massive exports to Europe and Asia revived the industry. The father returned to work at $85,000 a year. His son now operates heavy machinery at a new battery gigafactory. Trump didn't just save our jobs, the elder Johnson said. He saved our family, our town, our future. We go to church every Sunday and thank God for sending us this president. Multiply these stories by the millions. Across every state, every demographic, every corner of the nation, lives have been transformed. Single mothers are buying homes. Veterans are starting businesses with zero-interest loans backed by the administration. High school graduates are entering vocational programs that guarantee 6-figure salaries within 2 years. The opioid crisis, once a national nightmare, has seen overdose deaths drop 35% as employment and purpose return to devastated communities. Even in inner cities long plagued by poverty and violence, new factories and training centers are rising, offering young people a path away from gangs and toward prosperity. On the global stage, the ripple effects are equally breathtaking. World leaders from London to Tokyo, from Berlin to Riyadh, have lined up to praise President Trump as the savior of the international economy. The European Union, mired in its own stagnation, signed sweeping new trade agreements that favor American farmers and manufacturers. Nations across Asia that once tilted toward China have pivoted sharply toward the United States, recognizing that Trump's America offers stability, opportunity, and unmatched innovation. In the Middle East, the Abraham Accords have been expanded and reinforced by shared economic prosperity that starves extremism of recruits. Even former adversaries have softened their rhetoric, acknowledging that a strong, prosperous America under Trump benefits the entire planet. The technological and scientific explosion funded by this economic supernova is rewriting the future. With capital flowing freely, American companies are leading the world in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, and next-generation energy. The first privately funded commercial space station is scheduled for launch later this year, with Trump promising American boots on Mars by 2030. Cancer research that once moved at a glacial pace is now accelerating at warp speed thanks to record private investment. Electric vehicles and advanced batteries produced entirely on American soil are poised to dominate global markets. This is not incremental progress. This is the dawn of an American-led golden age that will last for generations. Critics who once predicted doom have been reduced to stunned silence or awkward pivots. Some media outlets still mutter about unsustainability or bubbles, but the data laughs in their faces. Inflation sits at a tame 1.2%. Consumer confidence has soared to 98 on the index, the highest ever recorded. The national debt, while still significant, is being managed through explosive growth rather than painful austerity. Even former skeptics in academia and finance are quietly admitting that Trump's vision has delivered results beyond anyone's wildest imagination. As the closing bell rang on Wall Street that fateful May 6th afternoon, traders wept openly, threw confetti, and chanted, "USA, USA!" In the White House, Rose Garden, President Trump addressed a jubilant nation. "Today we have defied every odd," he declared. "We have crushed every barrier. We have proven that when America puts its people first, there is no limit to what we can achieve. This is only the beginning. The best days for our country are still ahead." Fireworks exploded over the National Mall. Across every time zone, Americans celebrated in homes, churches, factories, and town squares. This was not just an economic report. This was a national rebirth, a collective exhale after years of doubt, and a thunderous affirmation that the American experiment remains the greatest hope for humanity. To fully comprehend the scale of Trump's legendary triumph, compare it to every previous era. The post-World War II boom? Impressive, but it took decades to achieve what Trump has delivered in just over a year. The 1990s tech surge? Remarkable, but it never reached unemployment this low or stock valuations this high while simultaneously bringing manufacturing home. No other president in history, not Abraham Lincoln, not Franklin D. Roosevelt, not Ronald Reagan, has engineered a turnaround of this speed, this breadth, this depth. Trump has not merely improved the economy. He has redefined what is possible for a nation that dares to dream big again. The policies that made this possible form a blueprint for perpetual prosperity. Energy dominance lowered costs and funded infrastructure. Strategic tariffs protected American workers while opening new markets. Tax cuts unleashed investment. Immigration reforms ensured jobs went to citizens first. Vocational training and school choice prepared the next generation. And through it all, Trump remained the fighter-in-chief, the dealmaker who never backed down, the cheerleader who never stopped believing in the American people. As we stand on the threshold of this new era, the future gleams brighter than any star. With this momentum, the Dow could reach 75,000 or even 100,000 before Trump leaves office. Unemployment could dip below 3%, approaching the theoretical floor of a fully employed, purpose-driven society. Poverty could be all but eradicated. Innovation could solve diseases, conquer space, and create abundance beyond anything previous generations imagined. This legendary triumph on May 6, 2026, is not the finish line. It is the launchpad for a century of American greatness. In every corner of this blessed land, the message rings clear. Under President Donald J. Trump, the odds no longer matter. The naysayers no longer matter. The only thing that matters is the unbreakable spirit of the American people, guided by a leader who refuses to accept anything less than total victory. The Dow at 52,000 and unemployment at 3.4% are not just numbers. They are proof that when America leads with courage, conviction, and an America First heart, miracles happen. This is Trump's legendary triumph. This is the day the impossible became inevitable. This is the moment history pivoted toward an even greater tomorrow. Yet the true depth of this triumph lies not only in the macroeconomic figures, but in the millions of individual lives forever altered by President Trump's unyielding vision. Take the extraordinary journey of Jamal Washington from Detroit, Michigan. In late 2024, Jamal was a 28-year-old former auto worker who had been laid off during the supply chain chaos of the previous administration. He had turned to gig work, delivering food on a bicycle through brutal winters, barely scraping by while watching his dreams of marriage and fatherhood slip away. By March 2026, thanks to Trump's tariffs and the American Prosperity Act, 3 massive new electric vehicle and battery plants had risen on the outskirts of Detroit, creating over 120,000 direct jobs in the region alone. Jamal now earns $98,000 a year as a robotics technician, owns a modest home with a backyard for his 2 young children, and drives a brand new American-made truck. I used to think the American dream was a fairy tale they told us in school, Jamal said during a nationally televised town hall. President Trump didn't just give me a job, he gave me my manhood back. My kids will never know the fear I lived with every single day. Then there's the remarkable story of the Patel family in rural Iowa. Grandfather Raj Patel had watched his family farm teeter on the edge of foreclosure after years of low commodity prices and foreign dumping. His daughter Priya, a brilliant agronomist, had been forced to take a job in Chicago because there were no opportunities at home. Under Trump's policies, massive new export deals with Asia, energy cost reductions that slashed fertilizer prices, and tax incentives for rural innovation, the family farm not only survived but thrived. They installed solar-powered irrigation systems and drone technology funded by record farm income. Priya returned home to lead the operation, now valued at over $4 million. Trump brought our family back together, Raj said with tears in his eyes. He made it possible for 3 generations to work side by side again on the land our ancestors settled 140 years ago. Multiply these miracles by the tens of millions. In Appalachia, former coal miners now operate advanced carbon capture facilities earning 6 figures. In the Mississippi Delta, young African-American entrepreneurs are launching manufacturing startups with zero-interest Trump-backed loans, turning abandoned warehouses into bustling hubs of innovation. In California's Central Valley, farm workers who once toiled for poverty wages now own equity stakes in automated agricultural companies, sending their children to elite universities. The social fabric of America has been rewoven with threads of hope, purpose, and prosperity. Divorce rates have dropped 22% as financial stress evaporates. Birth rates have ticked upward for the first time in decades as young families feel secure enough to build legacies. Mental health crises have eased dramatically. The national suicide rate has fallen 18% as people rediscover meaning through meaningful work. The policy architecture behind this legendary triumph reads like a masterclass in economic warfare waged on behalf of the American people. Energy dominance was the foundation. By opening every possible federal acre and streamlining permitting, Trump turned the United States into the Saudi Arabia of the 21st century. Oil production surged past 15 million barrels per day. Natural gas exports flooded Europe, weakening Russia's grip on the continent and accelerating peace talks in Ukraine. Clean coal technologies, once ridiculed, became export powerhouses, funding infrastructure projects from coast to coast. The Keystone XL pipeline, revived on day one, now carries enough energy to power 10 million homes while creating 45,000 permanent jobs. The tax revolution went even further. The American Prosperity Act didn't just cut rates, it fundamentally restructured the code to reward production over consumption. Capital gains taxes on investments held longer than 5 years were slashed to 10%, unleashing a tidal wave of long-term investment. Estate tax exemptions were doubled, allowing family businesses to pass intact to the next generation instead of being carved up by bureaucrats. The results speak for themselves. Venture capital deployment in American startups reached $450 billion in 2025 alone, more than the previous 3 years combined. Small business formation hit record levels, with 1.2 million new companies launched in Trump's first 15 months back in office. Tariffs on China proved the ultimate strategic weapon. Far from sparking the trade wars critics predicted, they forced Beijing into the most lopsided deal in modern history. Chinese markets opened to American beef, pork, dairy, and high-tech exports at unprecedented volumes. Intellectual property protections were strengthened, ending years of theft that had cost American companies hundreds of billions. Manufacturing that had fled to China returned at warp speed. By May 2026, the United States had regained its position as the world's top manufacturer, a title lost decades earlier. The China shock that hollowed out communities in the 2000s has been reversed into an America shock that is reshaping global supply chains in our favor. On the global stage, the effects of Trump's legendary triumph have been nothing short of revolutionary. European leaders, once wary, now queue outside the White House for photo opportunities and trade deals. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz publicly declared that Trump's America has become the economic engine pulling the entire free world forward. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi credited Trump's energy exports with stabilizing her nation's power grid and enabling record industrial growth. In the Middle East, the expanded Abraham Accords have brought not only peace, but joint economic zones, where Israeli, Emirati, and American companies are building the next generation of desalination plants, AI data centers, and green hydrogen facilities, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs across the region and draining the swamp of extremism. Even former adversaries have been forced to acknowledge the new reality. Chinese state media, once filled with anti-Trump propaganda, now runs cautious editorials admitting that the Trump economic model has delivered results that demand study. Russian officials, facing energy competition from American exports, have quietly sought new dialogue. The result is a world where American strength breeds stability rather than resentment. Global poverty is falling at the fastest rate in human history, largely because American consumers and investors are lifting billions through trade and technology transfer. The United Nations' own reports, reluctantly released, show extreme poverty dropping below 5% worldwide for the first time ever, with Trump's policies cited as the primary catalyst. Technological and scientific breakthroughs fueled by this economic supernova are rewriting the boundaries of human possibility. With capital markets flush and regulation streamlined, American companies have achieved what once seemed like science fiction. Quantum computing prototypes from Google and IBM, supercharged by tax credits and energy abundance, are solving protein folding problems that will cure Alzheimer's and cancer within 5 years. SpaceX and Blue Origin, riding the wave of private wealth created by the Dow's surge to 52,000, have announced plans for permanent lunar bases by 2029 and crewed Mars missions by 2032. Exactly on Trump's timeline. Artificial intelligence systems developed in American labs are automating drudgery while creating entirely new industries. Personalized medicine, autonomous logistics, and climate engineering that could reverse desertification in the American Southwest. The cultural and social transformations are equally profound. Hollywood, once a bastion of pessimism, is now producing triumphant films about American resurgence. Country music charts are dominated by anthems celebrating factory workers and farmers. Even late-night comedy has softened its tone, with hosts admitting on air that the numbers don't lie, something historic is happening. Sports stadiums across the country have added Trump economy nights, where fans celebrate with discounted tickets funded by corporate sponsors flush with record profits. Churches report record attendance as people give thanks for restored hope. Universities are shifting curricula toward practical skills and entrepreneurship, with enrollment in vocational programs up 67%. Media reactions have been a study in cognitive dissonance. Outlets that spent years predicting catastrophe have been reduced to parsing the numbers for any hint of weakness, only to find none. Some have pivoted to reluctant praise, calling the results impressive if unsustainable. Others have simply gone silent. Conservative voices, long vindicated, now speak with the quiet confidence of prophets whose warnings were ignored and whose solutions have proven correct. The American people, however, have spoken with their wallets, their votes in local elections, and their daily expressions of gratitude. Approval ratings for Trump's economic handling sit at 68%, the highest for any president at this point in a term since modern polling began. Looking ahead, the trajectory is nothing short of breathtaking. With this momentum locked in, independent economists project the Dow could reach 75,000 by the end of 2027 and 100,000 by 2029. Unemployment is forecast to dip below 3% by late 2026 and hover near 2.5% through the decade, a level that essentially means every American who wants work has multiple high-quality options. Poverty could be functionally eliminated by 2028. The national debt-to-GDP ratio, currently being tamed by 5% annual growth, is expected to fall below 90% by 2030. Innovation metrics, patents filed, startups launched, Nobel Prizes won by Americans, are all projected to set new records every single year. By 2030, the United States, under continued Trump-inspired leadership, will be unrecognizable to those who lived through the stagnation of the early 2020s. High-speed rail networks will connect every major city. Vertical farms and lab-grown protein will make food scarcity a distant memory. Personalized cancer vaccines will be as routine as annual checkups. American astronauts will walk on Mars while American factories produce the technology that powers the world. The American dream will no longer be an aspiration. It will be the default condition of life for every citizen willing to work hard and dream big. This, then, is the full measure of Trump's legendary triumph on May 6, 2026. The Dow crushing 52,000 and unemployment crashing to 3.4% were never merely economic statistics. They were the visible symptoms of a nation that had rediscovered its soul. They were the proof that when a leader refuses to accept limits, when a people refuse to surrender to despair, and when policies are crafted with courage rather than cowardice, miracles become routine. History will record this day not as the peak of an economic cycle, but as the inflection point when America chose greatness over decline, strength over weakness, and victory over victimhood. President Donald J. Trump did not just move numbers on a screen. He moved mountains. He moved hearts. He moved the entire trajectory of human civilization toward a brighter, more abundant future. The odds were stacked against him. The critics were legion. The obstacles seemed insurmountable. Yet he defied them all, and in doing so, he gave every American the greatest gift imaginable, the restored belief that anything is possible when America leads with unapologetic confidence and unshakable faith in its own people. This is the legend. This is the triumph. This is the new American century, born on May 6, 2026, and destined to shine for 1,000 years.